Darn it. Okay. Okay, guys. Having some technical difficulties, but we're back. All right. Thank you again. Thanks again, everyone, and welcome into the room with a special agenda. Thank you, everyone that's taken time out of their schedule, work, family, entertainment. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate you all joining me. And today's topic is something that um, those who have special needs kids, we day to day have things that we're dealing with. And one of the things is once your child gets diagnosed, it is one of the heaviest things that you will deal with. And the topic of our discussion is that gap. Once you start to recognize the different things that you see in your child that is different, they're not reaching the milestones that educationally that they should reach, developmentally they should reach, their interactions, you start to notice a difference. So you start to go through that process. Once you're, if you have a good pediatrician, they start to acknowledge it. Depends on where they are on the spectrum. Sometimes they notice automatically. They're not making eye contact. They're not holding their eye contact. Even their motor skills, their fine motor skills are sometimes affected. Depends on where they are on the spectrum and what other developmental issues that are happening. Many times they will develop more than one developmental issues. For my daughter, for Rayla, we had to deal with her having walking issues. The first person that noticed, and I didn't realize, I felt it was a criticism without realizing that it was just an acknowledgement. It was something that she noticed was happening. My mother in law noticed that Rayla failed a lot, um, more than other children. It was more every few feet. She had one leg that went straight and one that was kind of perpendicular. Um, and she walked like that. And she still kind of does. She had to have PT for that. Um, and for those who don't know what PT is, and you're listening in and you don't, or your children never had to have that, it's physical therapy. And I didn't realize, or even as a new parent, you start to internalize everything people say to you because you feel on the chopping block and in a fishbowl all the time. You feel constantly judged and watched, and you just feel like everybody's waiting for you to mess this up. And I did not acknowledge her respectfully. I didn't say anything per se. I just kind of was dismissive, unintentionally, but I felt for my own soundness of mind at that moment. I felt like she just is maybe kind of clumsy. I wasn't someone who wasn't clumsy. I'll say that I was a very clumsy child. I fell a lot, but I didn't need PT. I couldn't. I just was that child. In high school, they called me Gimpy. I was always falling. I was always hurting myself. So I thought that maybe she just has that genetic thing going on. And the genetic thing she did have was my husband. For those who don't know him well, and when he or doesn't know about him from his when he was really young, he had problems with his legs, so he had to have braces. And he, for a good bit of his youth, he wore braces on his legs, and eventually, to correct the way his legs were growing. And later, um, he was able to get rid of them. He still has a slight bow in his leg, but I thought that maybe um, I noticed, and I kind of thought in the back of my mind, but I was like, no, she noticed. Sometimes we don't realize that when people are giving us information, they're giving us that information for the purpose of being kind and assisting us. It's not to judge you or correct everything you do, because sometimes the corrections that need to be made, they do, it's something that has to happen, and it's not because they're trying to be mean to you or criticize you. Sometimes we feel like people are overly critical, and I just kind of missed it as a parent. And once I started to notice other things that were happening, it took a friend to tell me that I really needed to get my daughter assessed. But other people were starting to say things, and she said, I had a coworker once, which my husband brought her up to my job once, and she was maybe approaching two, and she said to me, "Shouldn't she be talking?" Now this person didn't have kids, so I was like, you know, she was talking, but not conversation. She wasn't asking anything. There might be one word. She had started for a little while, but then she started to regress. And I was dismissive of what her observation is, because in my mind, I said, she don't have no children. What you talking about? She didn't even have a niece or a nephew, but she was correct in that that was a milestone that should have happened. Now, other people weren't really saying much, and I talked early. Most people know how to talk to a tree if it's standing long enough. So it was something that I should have caught on, but as a parent, I just didn't. And maybe in some ways, I did not want to acknowledge it. Now, once I started to um, kind of catch on, the doctor started to ask me questions, and he kind of did this exam where he had me fill out some paperwork of different things that he noticed that wasn't happening for her. Dr. Gluckman gave me the paperwork, and it had questions about her talking and babbling, and her when she started to stand and walk, because he started to notice things about her, things that I didn't notice. I knew that some children take a while to teeth. So for her, I thought the drooling that she was doing was related to the fact that she was still teething. That was not it. She had poor motor skills. So her eventually we got her diagnosed, took her to the Marcus Institute. And how that came about was a friend. It told me, she said, and this is hard to say out loud because I almost feel ashamed as a parent, and many people will, um, because you feel so much pain when you start to acknowledge, and the weight of what someone is saying to you hits you. And I feel ashamed because what she said to me was, I will no longer talk to you. We will no longer be friends if you do not take this child to get assessed. She had told me that her son had been diagnosed as having autism shortly before. Now, our children were literally 5 days apart. Um, and I didn't know why she was so upset. She said that he had autism. Well, at the time, I did not know what autism was, what that meant. Um, and she was so upset. So I'm ashamed to say also, I wasn't supportive. I was just like, what is wrong with her? Um, but I didn't say that to her. I just listened. And then I kind of moved to another topic. But she was in her grieving process because she had found out what that meant, how that was going to affect her life, how it was going to affect her child's life, what this could possibly mean. And now she had the weight of trying to figure out what needed to be done to make sure her child had a quality of life and possibly some independence. But I did not recognize at the time that that would possibly mean that my child might not be the level of independent that I hoped for them initially to be. All parents, when your children are born, when you get the news that you are going to be having a child, the thoughts in your mind. It brings me to the title of a book by Dr. Seuss, Oh Baby, the Places You Will Go. You, in your mind, envision their life. You envision them going to school, making friends, their first step, their teasing, them laughing, their smile, holding them, and the things that you also hope for is that they do make friends and that they're easy to soothe and that they're not in pain and they're physically healthy. But the thing that doesn't cross our mind often in the initial process of you things you pray for, you some people pray for a girl, some people pray for a boy. But the one thing that most people say is I hope to have a healthy child, whether it's a girl or whatever it is. I'm hoping for a healthy boy or a healthy girl. I hope they're happy. But the things that you don't mentally make a connection with, or your mind doesn't usually, unless you have that in your bloodline and in your family, and you know that that's a possibility. Possibly you've been tested. Maybe your mate or yourself have had some learning delays or issues, or your siblings or friends' children have mental delays. But most people put that out of their mind. So we don't anticipate that. So when we receive that information, if we are um, headed in the right direction as far as getting them assessed, because some children don't get assessed until later, not when they're very young, but sometimes when they're in middle school, elementary school. Some people don't get assessed until they're adults because in those cases it may not be severe. It may not be they're in that particular place on the spectrum because there are different places on the spectrum that they could be. So when you get that information, it hits you like a brick. And in some cases, as a parent, you you grieve those things that you was hoping, but you also there's a level of guilt that comes with not figuring it out right away. You almost feel, as I did, embarrassed, ashamed, like a bad parent. And one of the things that we have to grieve is not the things that they aren't. I was reading this particular book that I will encourage everybody to read, and you have to put it to a mirror to Autism Source Book, and it talks about diagnosis, treatment, coping, and healing. The one particular chapter that I was reading, rather than trying to locate it, I'm gonna put my glasses on, yeah. And it really helped me with what my concept of grieving is. Initially, for me, just like the author, one of the things that we think about also when we think about grieving is we think about losing something. And how does that affect your family and your loved ones and how you cope with that? But for me, it meant something entirely different. And for her, it helped me to understand that I did not necessarily have to grieve what they weren't, who they weren't going to be. It was letting go and accepting, understanding and accepting that things were going to be different. But that did not mean that just because they had a broken wing, they would never fly. Having the right therapists, having the right doctors, having the right help, understanding that everybody that gives you criticism is not trying to help hurt you or make you feel that you're incompetent or not as capable as you could or should be, that you're not trying to be the best parent, that you, and for some people have had people say to them, maybe that from what your bloodline is, or this or that, that you shouldn't have had children because of these particular possible issues. They're not saying any of those things. What they're saying is, I'm here to help. But sometimes things sound differently because we're not listening with an ear to hear the positive. We're looking for information. That is critical. So we're missing out on the opportunity to help our family in the way that's most effective, preparing you to do the things that you need to do. Because without that acknowledgement, without that understanding, you will not be able to be of the best assistance that you can. And it doesn't give you an opportunity to celebrate their milestones when they reach them. It might take them longer, just like a bird with a broken wing, to fly, because they need to heal. They need that assistance. They need to mend differently because they learn differently. But in no way does that mean that they're not the blessing that God intended for you to have. It does not mean that they're not a gift. That chapter, and I'm trying to find it. I lost my marker in here earlier when I was walking in, but this book has helped me so much, and the all of it, in coping, coming to terms with it. That was a one that was huge. I think it was 213. I have read all of it, but I fell in love with this book. And it has so much information as far as all the different kinds of therapy. I did not know all that was available. There was a lot that we missed, a lot that we received, a lot of really helpful, wonderful therapists, people who were there. They became like family. They became more than I realized. But there was a lot that I missed. Yes, this was it, inside and outside of the home and coping with everyday life. And it explained that a lot of the children, a lot of the things that a lot of parents have problems with. And for me, we had a lot of issues with it. Oh my goodness. It talked about them having sleeping problems. Well, most children that are ASD, on the autistic spectrum disorder, or for a lot of parents, they'll tell you your child has. And when it started out with them telling me, and me kind of forcing the issue, someone told me that it wasn't their position to tell me, but they told me anyway and said, "Look, we ain't gonna tell nobody I told you, but we gonna I'm about to let the cat out the bag that she was autistic." But they'll tell you that they have pervasive developmental disorder. Pervasive developmental disorder is another way of saying that they are autistic. That's what that is. But they have problems with sleeping, i.e., you're going to have problems with sleeping. So even if you sleep well or you struggle, you're going to have anxiety, a lot of it, because of the fact that you're not getting adequate rest. And when you don't get adequate rest, it's like if you've ever had too much of a energy drink or coffee because you haven't had sleep, you will feel jittery all the time, which leads to anxiety. And a lot of times, on top of feeling like that, we think that taking energy drinks will help. It will make your problem worse. But it talks about them having, and how important it is to have a routine. and being aware of your children's sensitivities and things of that matter. Accepting those things that are going on within your household and acknowledging those things and not feeling that you have to fix that. You can prepare them, you can do ABA, but accepting who they are gives you so much peace. Accepting that the fact that your mate isn't always going to be on the same page with you. That is, many of the parents that um, have special needs children, a good more than 50% end up in divorce because we're so busy struggling to help our children with the behaviors they have so that they can cope in a world that's neurotypical and cope with people who are neurotypical because lots of people get agitated easy. They don't know what they're looking at, they don't know what the deal is, and strangers sometimes can be cruel. They say things because they don't know what's going on. So you all are in a battle of trying to deal with that day to day and dealing with each other. And at some point, you start to try to control the other person because it has become a part of your routine to try to control your child's behaviors, try to fix things, trying to make them not behave in a certain manner so that you don't get the stares and the comments because it's painful. People have said so many of the cruelest things unintentionally because they don't know. And you have to understand that it comes from a place sometimes that's not intended to be mean. Sorry. It comes from a place that's not intended to be mean. They're not trying to be mean to you, most cases. Some people, they get offended because they feel like you're not controlling your child without understanding what it looks like. And you acknowledging that and recognizing their problems, that's a them problem. You're not under obligation to address perfect strangers or that. Sometimes you may feel compelled to, but you have to sometimes dismiss the things that are negative that you hear outside of your own personal life and experience. You know that they don't know and let it go. But we have to make sure that we're not being dismissive to our mate. They're not being on the same page doesn't mean they're being dismissive. We have to understand that that's their child too. You're not always going to share the same opinion. You don't need to be cruel to them or angry that they aren't on that same page. They may even struggle with acknowledging your child is having these different things going on. But you have to understand that the parent that really does know what's going on and you're the one that's taking them to therapy and everything, you have to understand that that's their child too. And that you both love this child. Sometimes it does come from ego, but you have to understand ego and frustration. Sometimes not listening to the other person is them just being in denial. Denial is not intended to be hurtful to you or dismissive of how intelligent you are or dismissive of all the effort and work you're putting in. Sometimes it comes from a place of pain and prayer that that they see is not what it is. My dad was sick and he died from cancer because he did not want them to biopsy it. He did not want to, and he had me believing from what he said and the way he worded the information he received from the doctors that this was something that they thought, not knew. So I was listening to him rather than what I did not know. I kind of dismissed it along with him because he didn't want to be sick, because he knew he would be struggling to deal with this. He knew he'd be really sick. He knew that, and he didn't receive the treatment. Later, when I went back with him and he wanted to let me know without saying anything directly to me, that he let me know that he was getting an MRI. He needed someone with him. And I was shocked when the nurse asked him, did he know why he was there? And he said that he had a mask some time ago, and he stated the size of it, because prior to that he had a stroke, which he also tried to make me believe that it was just something else. He had had a stroke as a result of that mask, so he knew. But he didn't want me to worry, so he just thought, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm not going through all of that. And there I was in denial with him. So sometimes people are not in denial because the truth is painful. Sometimes, yes, it's important to get ahead of this as soon as you can, but it's important not to denigrate what they say, not to take it personally, but to understand and give them the words of acknowledgement by stating to them, I know this is painful. I know that maybe it's a possibility that they could grow out of what you think it is. But how about we just check into it further so we can see? How about we make a list of questions we want to ask the doctors or these specialists so that we find out what makes them think from what they've observed that our child may have developmental issues. Because is it possible that they have these things that we haven't realized? Is it going to possibly improve on its own? It may change, but wouldn't it be nice if we put in the effort so that we could get them in the best place for them? I know it'll be time out of our schedule, and maybe they can help us find some resources. In the beginning, it was difficult for my husband also, because when I tried to have the conversation with him about what I was observing and what I had been told that it was necessary to get her assessed, and that she wasn't really having conversation that she needed, because at that point she was 2 sliding towards 3, and she wasn't having a conversation with us. She wasn't pointing and asking us for stuff. She wasn't saying, what's this or what's that. She wasn't asking any what questions, any where questions. She wasn't acknowledging us like other children do. No, she definitely loved her dad, and she definitely loved me, and we loved her. We weren't trying to do that for the purpose of getting on with our life and getting on to work and viewing this as an inconvenience, because that's part of the grieving process too. Understanding that letting go of the things that aren't going to happen, but letting go of our preconceived notions, letting go of that. Because grieving sometimes is having to acknowledge what we've lost or what we're letting go of. Grieving doesn't always have to be painful, because sometimes when you lose someone, if that person's been sick for a long time, you know that they're no longer in pain anymore. And as hard as it is, and they won't be there, you know that they are no longer in a place of suffering. They're not doing that anymore. And for those who've lost someone in a way in which you've had to watch on a daily basis or on a regular basis when you come to see them or whatnot, if they're in a home or they're sick and they're in the hospital, watching them suffer is one of the most painful things that you can do. So letting go of things that we think won't be. But one of the other things is it addressed so many things in this book. It was so helpful to understand what needed to be done, how to address those things, accepting who your mate is and accepting and respecting their opinion in those particular matters, accepting that you do have a team, even if you don't realize who that team is. Because oftentimes, once you get through with not realizing that the people who are giving their opinions aren't trying to be opinionated and that the opinion that they're giving is just an attempt to be of assistance. It's an attempt to be kind. It's an attempt to be supportive. Sometimes we believe that we don't have help, we don't have support when we actually had it all along. We always had help. And letting go of that concept of we're looking for perfection. A lot of the times, the parents, as as a parent of a child who has special needs, I had to accept that I was pushing for perfection and frustrating them. And I was doing that with my mate as well when it came to helping. I literally trained him to be less helpful because of the constant criticism that I was getting. I had help, I just couldn't control the help. Someone said that to me recently, and they didn't realize it, and I was in a lot of pain myself from not being able to leave my child with them because of being overwhelmed and my personal anxiety of their own limitations. And I knew that they would be limited in the help that they could give, but I wasn't accepting that they could have been of some help when I really wasn't accepting almost any. I'll let y'all sit with that. Sometimes you do have help, but when you can't control the help, it is the most anxiety that you will experience as a parent when it comes to parenting your child and protecting them. Sometimes we, in our mind, contrive thoughts of our child is going to be in all this danger. Some cases that is absolutely true. And no one is saying that you should put your child in a position where they're not going to be protected and safe. But you also have to give people an opportunity to see what they are capable of helping you with so that they can be a contributing factor, so that they can learn how to be of assistance. They may be able to help your child become independent in ways that you didn't realize that they could be. Maybe you can stay around while they are doing this and watching your child so that you can be of help and some learn a little bit of something because sometimes we don't realize the help we have is there. They're there, but we're spending our free time pushing them away because it looks differently than what we expected it to be, because what we are bringing is different. Our circumstances, our child is different, they behave differently. So we tend not to trust many people, particularly if your child is nonverbal or not verbal for a very long time. It's important to develop a routine of making sure that once you get those things in place and you all have those conversations, and then you start to look around you and assess what's being said and what you said, and sitting down and having those conversations with your loved ones, your your family that is immediate and your extended family. This book helped something that, oh my God, I wish I'd had it sooner. I wish I knew it existed. Dealing within your household with siblings. Sometimes it's difficult because a lot of people have more than one child that's on the spectrum. Um, we have more than one child that's on the spectrum. Sometimes you may not know. You'll notice certain things. Then the other child may also have tolerance issues or other things that's going on with them that makes it hard because it's not easy. They're not. They don't always feel they're getting the necessary attention, so they may act up in other ways so that you will pay more attention to them. This book, oh my goodness, I'm going to say it again for those who haven't had a chance to see it. Autism Source Book, and it addresses diagnosis, what all you need to do, who all you need to talk to, even different treatments, so many different kinds of treatments, how to cope with it, how to help your family, even how to cope with your mate and you in conflict, how to sort that out, because those are things that are definitely going to happen. And I strongly encourage you to get counseling because that's important. It's important so that you all can assess all the things that need to be sorted out, because you're going to be so knee deep at some point, and at some point, possibly shoulder deep. You may do it forever, where you are constantly looking for resources for your kid up and through their adult life, depends on where they are. Even making sure that you get proper respite and how to get respite so that you'll have time for your mate. Because at some point, as a couple, you may start to spend less time with each other because the children need you so much. But it's as important for you as it is for your mate to take that time to be with each other in every single way. You can't decide that my child is so important that no one else is. They tend to feel left out. And it's not reasonable to expect that you all will stay close if you don't create time. Time to study your Bible together, not for the purpose of correcting each other, but to enjoy it, to enjoy your relationship with the Heavenly Father, to enjoy that information that you're receiving that He's gifted us so that we can have time and understand how we are supposed to sort out conflict. The Bible gives a lot of information, but there will be times where you will need to seek outside help if you also struggle with anxiety and mental health issues, which sometimes will be exacerbated by the fact that you're coping with what you're coping with day to day. And all the different things that are going to come, because you're going to be dealing with school. It's going to come up within your household with them, um, in personal interactions. It's going to be a lot. And so it's important that you look out for your well being, not just for you all to sort out what's going on with your relationship, but how to make time for yourself, to make sure that you continue to have pieces of yourself that you keep, you start to heal those things that are broken or are starting to be broken. Because if you do too much without doing enough for yourself, you will overtax yourself. And you can't ask your mate to drown in this either, because you will lose sight of your relationship, your friendship. And even if you are great parents, you still need to be at least a good mate to each other. That's important. It's important that you take that time. that time to go out to dinner, that time to continue to date each other, that time to have adult conversations and adult time. So I want you all to take the time to check this out. The author is Karen Sif Excom. And again, it's Karen Sif Excorn. Check her book out. It is definitely a game changer. It has information on all the different resources in different states, even in different countries. I can't even tell you how important this is. Different organizations from state to state and the different foundations that were available. There's lots of stuff on the internet. It is, but it's it's nice to have someone that's dealing with your personal experience. And a lot of the different organizations that you'll contact will have definitely people who are experiencing that and can tell you from their own personal experience. But they also can be helpful to you in knowing that you need to broaden your circle. Those of us who are dealing with this daily have been dealing with it for years. Our circle's very small generally. No, you don't need to have a very large circle because sometimes too much is too much to manage. But you need to have a circle in which you do have a team and you do take care of yourself, that you're getting proper rest, that you give yourself permission sometimes for some different things that you're asked to participate in, to say, I can't because I have to look after me. It's important to divide your time up between your family and your children effectively and fairly. And what that looks like is taking time for yourself, even if it's just getting something to read that's unrelated to anything that they need for their personal well being because you look after that every day. So, I'm going to tell you all thank you so much for joining the room. Please check this book out. Um, take this time to close that gap within your family. Acknowledge the fact that you need help for yourself and that there are those that do love you and are there to be of assistance. Reevaluate the time that you take for them. Make sure that you understand that those who have different opinions, even within your family, not just your mate, about what's going on with your child, they don't intentionally plan to offend you. They aren't trying to be mean. They think they are being helpful and acknowledge that it's comes usually from a place of love. But you are entitled to stick to that you know and have taken the time to look into for the well-being of your child. Thank you all for joining me. You all have a wonderful night. Be kind to your loved ones and to those around you, neighbors, co-workers, distant family members even. Be kind because it's a choice. Love them and show them you love them, even if they're not able to show you that they love you. Have a great night. Okay. Okay. That was good.